11, as you looked at the problem, it said negative 1/7 B. Now, some people,
Ours is negative 1/5.
yours is 1/5. Well, let's change it. Negative 1/5, is yours a B?
Yep.
And then is it still less than 61?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. So in this problem, if we are solving, we want to get rid of the negative 1/5, which means we need to do, and we could divide, but easier than dividing is to multiply by the same thing on both sides of the equal sign, because dividing by a fraction gets ugly. So we can simply multiply on both sides by -5/1, and on this side just by -5. Now when we do that multiplication and we get B, and Maria, what'd you get for the number when you multiply? Negative 305. And then the thing that must change is we multiply by a negative, so it would be greater instead of less. And anytime we multiply or divide by a negative, so if I was graphing this, I have negative 305, I'll get your question in a minute, and then I would maybe see, I don't care if you want to go with negative 310 over here, right? And then this would be like negative 300. Just so that I know you know where negative 305 is in between those two. And if you wanted to just have 306 here, I would have been okay with that, and 304 here. And so where's all the values greater than negative 305? It does not include negative 305, so that's an open circle. And then it is everything to the right of that. Okay? It does not, because there's not an equal. Only when there's an equal do you close in the circle and include it. Did you find that? So that would be wrong, but to make sure you're understanding. So the question Gavin was asking, he said, what if I thought of it this way? Negative 1/5, even though there wasn't a plus. And he said, I added 1/5. Well, there's no plus sign. That was a time. So you need to be really careful in knowing that we are not adding 1/5 to the 61. And if you would add, would we change the inequality if you add 1/5? No. You would have just had B is less than 61 and 1/5, right, if you were adding that. But ours was not an addition problem. Ours was a multiplying. And when you multiply or divide by a negative, you switch that, okay? Let's look at 13 and 14, and then we are going to hand this page in. We're going to hand this page in, and we're handing in the page before it. So, tuition for a school states that Brenda owes $438. She wants to pay off her bill in 6 months, right? An inequality. Anyone raise their hand, think they got the inequality for it? It's not a hard one. Go ahead, Jeff.
6B is greater than or equal to 438.
Greater or equal to 438. So it states she owes this. She wants to pay it off. Right? An inequality that gives the least amount she could pay. So if she wants to pay that off, do you guys agree with him thinking greater or equal? Or could we have a different inequality here if we are looking at this one? As we look at this one, I am thinking that if I want to pay it off and at least that, did anyone have less or equal? Less or equal instead of greater or equal? So both ways when we solve it, we divide by 6, right? And so if we do it as Jack was saying, we're going to say that T is, in this case, greater or equal. The amount we have to pay is going to be greater or equal to $73. Is that all you got? Okay. You could have one like this on our test next week when you're solving it, okay? Where we're looking at writing this and solving. And so it says, write and solve an inequality gives the least amount he could repay each month. I agree. The least he could pay, we want to go greater or equal because the least he could pay is 73. And if he pays 73 for 6 months, he's done, right? But could he pay $80 a month, 1 month? Yes, so that's why it's greater or equal, because he could pay 73, and then 73, if he pays $73 by 6 months, he is gonna have it paid off in 6 months. But what if he wanted to pay 73 for the first month, and then the next month he pays 80, and the next one he pays 100, and the next one he pays 120? He's gonna pay it off quicker, right? So that's why we have to go greater or equal, not less or equal in this one, okay? In 14, if we look at Mark earns 363 a week, Pedro works for $8.25 an hour. How many hours must Pedro work to make as much as Mark? Now, this would be pretty easy to solve without even writing an inequality. And we want it to be so that Pedro, and he is making, if we're going to write our equation or inequality, what would our inequality be, Callie?
363 is less than or equal to 8.25 times x.
363 is less than or equal to 8.25x. Because we want Pedro's to be more, right? Okay. We want Pedro. We're trying to figure out how many hours must Pedro work to make as much or more. So we want it greater towards Pedro rather than less or equal, because this is Mark's. Okay. Now, could you have written it and put Pedro first? Yes, it wouldn't matter, right? You could have this equation being 8.25x, and then you could have said, oh, I want him to make as much or more, so greater than Mark's, which is 363. Okay, does that make sense? So thinking about that, we're going to divide both sides by 8.25. Gavin, question or comment?
Oh, I'm just going to
Tell us what we got. What'd you get?
44.
44. And so it says at least how many hours must he work? We'd want to put 44 hours. So he could work 44 hours, or he could work more than 44, right? So if I was thinking of the graph, he could work 44.3 hours, right? He makes more money. He could make 44. So if I'm looking at 44, he could make exactly, then it would be equal, right? Or he could make more. Yeah.
So can you, instead of writing two arrows in another, could you just on the ends, like on the end you have
What do you
one
mean
line?
two arrows?
Okay, so you know your little graph over
Yeah.
there? You have one line for 40 and one line for 50. Is it okay if you do that, or does it have to be at the end two arrows?
I'm not sure what you
Like,
mean.
I think you mean like just two arrows.
Oh, so what I would recommend is always put your graph above. Because if you do it right on the line, I can't tell. Because the number line, this number line, goes on forever and ever, right? This goes down here. We're only showing this part of the number line, right? So do your graph above it. And then you don't have to put arrows here on the number line. You just need to put an arrow on which way your solution is. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So what I want you to do is at the first one. And I say 5 more than. I should have had, do you agree with?
Yeah.
5 plus 6x equals 11.
It's
Okay? Difference of a number and 9 is 17. X minus 9 equals 17.
Or N.
11 less than the quotient. That's a special one, right? We got to flip it around. Subtraction, and we have to put the x divided by 3 first. Can you have it written as x divided by 3? Yes, but I will try to get you to do it like this for our story problems because it makes it so much easier to solve. Okay? So, as you were looking at those, yes?
So because it's addition, also 6x plus 5.
Yes. The question is, could you have had 6x plus 5? Same thing, right? Those are exactly the same. Okay? So, we are now going to look at common words that are used with inequalities. So, just like when we started this unit, and you had those words for addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, please write down these 2 phrases. for less than. A is less than B. A is fewer than B. Those are probably the two most common phrases you will see with that symbol. And if you were going to graph that symbol and you had something like x less than 2, would it be an open or closed circle at 2? Open. And so if I was thinking of my number line, if I say x is less than 2 or x is fewer than 2, it's an open circle. When I look at this next phrase that says A is greater than B, that's the easiest one to go with, right? A is greater than B. Whitney, let's just wait, and I'm going to have you write these down first, okay? Then I'll answer some questions. If I wanted to write x is greater than 2. Again, what would the graph look like at 2? It would have been an open circle at 2. And I would have said it's everything larger, like 3, 4, 5, 6, okay? So that phrase greater and more than. Most people get those first ones, and when they do, I show you the 2 that are down here for the first phrase. Almost everyone gets those first ones. It's the next 2 that go with these 2 phrases that a lot of people don't get, and they're easy to get confused. When I say A is at most, or we say A is no more than, that really means x is no more than 2. Again, if I was graphing that, this is the, because I did 2 in every other one up here, so then you can kind of see how they look different. So if I said x is at most 2, that means less or equal to 2. At most means 2 is the biggest it can be. Where you see that phrase, and the one that you see even more is, you guys are starting to get close to at least. You will see that you have to be at least 18 years old to vote. You have to be at least 14 to get your what that's coming up? Your permit that some of you will soon be getting in the next couple of years, right? So when you see this, you have to be at least, if it says you have to be at least 14, you cannot be 13. And if you go to vote and you're 17, they are not letting you vote. You have to be at least 18, right? That means you have to be greater or equal to, instead of 2 here, we could use 18.
How do
Right?
they know you're 18?
What would happen if
Driver's
you're
license.
right after you'll get it every year?
Then you don't get to vote until you turn 18. Right. That's why it says at least 18. That's why you can't go take your permit test at 13 if you turn the next day. You have to be 14. And once you're 14, they don't care if you don't come until you're 16. Right? You can still take that permit test, but you cannot go in when you're 13, right? So we'll keep this the same with the 2, but you will hear this phrase at least and at most. And you just got to think that, oh, if the most it can be is 2, that means it can be 2 or less than that. It's like when you're buying something and they say the most you have to spend is $30. That means you have 30 or less. You cannot spend $50, right? What would this graph look like at 2? This would be a closed circle because it can be at least 2. You can be 2 or greater. Okay? Give me a thumbs up when you guys have all of these written down. Quizlet, put in inequality phrases. You could make a flashcard, A less than B, put the phrases on the back. Maybe even a graph so that if you were quizzing yourself or if your parents or a sibling or someone else was helping you study and prepare for our test that will be next week. And I think it will be next week on Tuesday when we come back from Thanksgiving break. So that if you need to study that. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and write these. So it says write a sentence. if it's a one step, we're gonna solve it. If it's not, we are not gonna solve it because the two-step equations are coming in our next unit. So we read it. 3 times the sum of a number is less than. This is our inequality. So first we have to decide which inequality we're gonna use and we're gonna substitute it in. For the phrase is less than, we should be using which inequality? Just the less than, right? So now we need to translate it, right? So when we're translating our phrase, 3 times the sum. The sum tells us to put this whole thing in a parenthesis. What are we summing? We're taking 3 times that. The sum of what, Abby, if you're reading it? The number and 2. What do you want to use for your number that we don't have any clue what that is? N. So we're going to have N. What does sum mean? And. So where we see this word sum, then where we see the phrase and, add, and that's going to be our addition. So N plus 2. Our phrase here is less than. And then we're going to have 36. Yes?
What's the difference for when it says less than 36 and then in the subtraction bracket it says less than?
You see this phrase is less than?
Oh, so that's how it is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
If it just says 2 less than 36, right? 2 less than 36 means 36 minus 2. Is less than means this inequality. Okay, good question. So, thinking about those phrases, okay? And then that last one, what they did was they just rewrote it kind of nice and close together. So, 3 times, they used X instead of N. I'm great with N because I think N works great for a number. And I will never mark it wrong if you don't use the exact same variable. Even if on the test I say, please use N and then you use an X, I am not going to care. So let's read this one. 6 times a number minus 8 is no more than. Is no more than means you need to turn back. What is no more than? Tell your shoulder partner. Did you get it right? Is no more, less or equal. Now, if you need to go back to that page and look at it, do that. That's going to be your hints page. That would be the page I take notes on to make sure I'm understanding. Okay? So if I am looking at that, let's write it out. So try writing it right now. You know that this is going to be less or equal. So try to write 6 times a number minus 8 is no more than, less or equal, twice a number. Write that out and check with your shoulder partner. See if you agree. But you got to write something before you can compare, right? Write before you compare. Jack, what'd you have? Jack over here. Read it. Tell me what I'm putting down. 6. N minus 8 in a parenthesis. 2n. I'm going to disagree with the parenthesis on this one. Why no parenthesis on this one and we had it in the last one? Kylie, what do you think?
Because it says 6 times the number.
Because we actually have to take 6 times the number first. So that means 6 times n minus 8. Whereas the other phrase said, I gotta look back at it, 3 times the sum. If it says 3 times the difference, then we have to have a parenthesis. So these are good ones and they're kind of tricky. So that's why these two, it kind of makes sense to put them together that we need to look at. So this one should just be 6n, right, minus 8, less or equal to 2n. When we get into our next unit, Unit D, we'll be working with solving equations that have variables on both sides, and adding like terms and doing all that stuff. That's Unit D that we're going into next. So at this point on the test, you would just write this, don't solve it. In your homework today, anything that's more than one step, you write it, do not solve. Okay? And I'll specifically show you. So this one says, let's use X this time. 8 times the difference of a number and 2 is at least 30. And I need to get some people who have not been up to the board for a while to come up. And the next one, the sum of a number and 5 is more than, so here is at least, those are our phrases, is more than. Think about which inequality first. You're going to check with your shoulder partner. And then we're going to come up and write it up here. Okay? So check with your shoulder partner. This one with the difference. Are they both correct? Yeah. Do you have to have a parenthesis on this side?
No.
No. But is it okay if you put a parenthesis? By all means. If you have this parenthesis or you don't, it's correct. Because you're saying n plus 5. If there's a parenthesis, what's out in front of that if there's nothing there? A 1. And what's 1 times n plus 5? That's just n plus 5, right? 4 times the difference of a number, the difference, where you see that word and, that's your subtraction. So right on, okay? All right, so this is going to be one that we are not going to solve. We just want to write it, okay? We want to see if it makes sense. And then on the bottom, there's a couple more that we're just going to write, and I actually want to get you to your homework.
Why is it like miniaturized on my thing? It's smaller than the other.
I know. I don't know why. I didn't make these notes. I was not part of this. I just got the notes from the other people that teach 7th grade pre-algebra. This is what they use, and this is what they gave me. There's some of it I'm not happy with, and there's other things. That's why tomorrow we're doing an extra worksheet, because I think we need more. But let's read it. Anyone want to volunteer read aloud for us? Whitney, you're on.
Okay, here we go. Start at the part.
Yes.
At a go-kart park, you pay $6 for admission, $4 for each ride. Or you can buy an all-day pass for $25, which includes admission and unlimited rides. How many times would you have to ride the go-kart so that buying an all-day pass is better value than paying for each ride?
So when is this a better value? Which would mean it would cost you more or less? So when we think of this, which one should cost us more? We actually want to have this being where this one is a greater cost and the all-day pass is less, right? What would we be putting here? We would be putting the go-kart rides times the number of rides plus our admission fee, okay? We do not want to solve this. We are not going to go through all of this stuff. We just want to write it. So, the price of the go-kart ride, if I'm looking at that, was $4 for each ride. 4x plus how much did we have to pay to get in? 6. And we want to find out when this is going to be more than 25. This is a 2-step equation. We get into 2-step equations in our next, or inequality, in our next unit. We're not going to do it now. We're not going to solve it. I know some of you possibly could. We're not going to solve. We only want to write it. Okay? On the next one, I want you to write number 1. Do this one. Write it here. Okay? And we're not going to do this last one. No, we're not going to do that one.
Rainbow.
Okay?
Wait, that was the wrong one.
What's that?
Parcel.
A parcel is when you mail something like an envelope. Okay? Do the first one. Okay? Read it. $5 admission, right? Plus $2 for each round. I might even use R for round instead of X. Could you use X? Sure. I want to find out when that is going to be greater or equal or less than or equal to 17.
Greater.
When this is greater. I want to know when this is a better buy, okay? If I was writing this one, I have a 42-pound item, like maybe my suitcase, and I want to figure out how much more I can put in it, right? So that it cannot be greater than 70, which means it could be less or equal. If any of you have ever flown, they say your bag can be 50 pounds or less. It can be exactly 50 pounds. Or it could be less than that, okay? Does that make sense for writing that one? The parcel is like just the envelope. We're not going to do the bottom one. And we're not going to do this one. We are going to look at the 6-6, which is C8. Do not throw it away yet. The reason you are not throwing your notes away,
Why not?
you might want to go back and review that vocabulary. Study. Do it. Try it. Only 11 is crossed off, but number 9, 10, and 12, you will write the inequality, and once you write it, do not solve it.
So do we graph it?
So, you're not graphing for those ones either, you're just writing.
Sorry.
They say use X, I don't care if you use N. This is a multiple choice one, you're matching 5 through 8. You match, like A, you put behind either 8, 6, 7, 5, 6, 7, or 8. Okay? So, I am in here in the morning. I've had a few people come in to do their retake stuff, to ask some questions. If you're not getting this, 8 a.m. I'm here. I'm usually here after this period.